When I was in elementary school, I never read much. My parents would read to me bedtime stories, and during library time I would occasionally look at a book, but I was mainly interested in the cover or the pictures in those books, not the actual content. In 5th grade, we were required to keep a reading log. Every time we read a book, our parents would sign off on it, and then our teacher, Mrs. Antonucci, would give us Antonucci bucks, which could then be used on little games or toys or some candy. In 5th grade, I only read about 10 books, which was definitely towards the bottom of the class. But in 5th grade, I discovered that my favorite movie series, The Lord of the Rings, was based off of a book series. So I asked my dad if we could go to the library and I could check it out so I could read it for class. I did not realize that The Lord of the Rings was over 1,000 pages long, nor did I know that when I read it I would miss a lot of the deeper meanings and the symbolism in it, but I just knew then that I wanted to read the book because the movies were good, so obviously the books had to be good as well. So I picked up the book and I started reading. But it was such a wonderful book. All the characters, some of them were not even in the movies. It just amazed me. I remember explicitly one of the first times when I was reading it very early on, the word holy was in the book. Not the word holy like in the Holy Spirit, like in the religious sense of being like pure, but holy as in being full. And I remember driving to my grandma's house, asking my mom in the car what the word holy meant. She explained to me that it meant like full. But at that point, I was amazed about the number of words that are in the English language that I didn't know. But I was constantly reading all the time. When I was in the car driving to school or coming back from school, I was reading. When I was going to other places, like when I was going on vacation, or if I was going to a grandparent's or family member's house, I was constantly reading. I was reading in the bathroom. I wouldn't put down Lord of the Rings or really any books afterwards. It turned me into a voracious reader. And one of the things I think Tolkien explains very well is the fact that stories fill your imagination. It's another place to get away from, because I was a very lonely kid. I think this quote, he gave an essay on it, and he summed up very well why I was constantly reading, beginning in 6th grade. The realm of fairy story is wide and deep, and high and filled with many things. All manner of beasts and birds are found there. Shoreless seas and stars uncounted, beauty that is an enchantment, and an ever-present peril, both joy and sorrow as sharp as swords. In that realm a man may, perhaps, count himself fortunate to have wandered, but its very richness and strangeness tie the tongue of a traveler who would report them, and while he is there it is dangerous for him to ask too many questions, lest the gates should be shut and the keys be lost. So when I was around this time, I was very lonely. I was bullied. I never really had too many friends. I just had my one friend who introduced me to Lord of the Rings, but that was really about it. But in books, I found comfort. I found solace. I found friends. I found adventures. I could go hang out in the Shire with Frodo and Sam, or I would be at great battles fighting and defending from the forces of evil. And this quote, said by Aragorn, "There is always hope," is one that always comes back to me whenever I was at my lowest. In Lord of the Rings, it was always a very hopeful book. It was a fairy tale, so good won in the end. No matter how dark and dangerous it was, good always won. So Lord of the Rings was definitely life-changing. It gave me hope when I was very sad, because I was very sad throughout my middle school and junior high years. But through books, I found hope and I found solace. And in Lord of the Rings, I would read it pretty much every year. I would read it at least once a year for a lot of my life. Once I got into college, that stopped. But I would still occasionally go back, open up Lord of the Rings, or rewatch the movies, and I would gain some hope. And I think Sam summed it up best about why rereading and how reading Lord of the Rings changed my life. Folk in these stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't. They kept going because they were holding on to something. That there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. I agree with Tolkien and with Sam, who is saying it in the book, that there is good in this world and it's worth fighting for.